We envision a future where individuals are empowered to think critically and creatively, where citizens become agents of change by promoting self governance, co creation, and bottom up approaches. Welcome to our podcast. Okay, so welcome back to the Kreashon Podcast. Today I have guest with me. I have Churmer Bomba from Greenpeace Netherlands, also from Bonaire, originally. So welcome, Churmer.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yes, my pleasure. Thank you for joining, and I'm gonna dive right in because that's like my favorite style of interviewing people. Um, so who are you? Who is Churmer?
Now, German is someone that grew up on the island of Bonaire. I lived there until I was 19, and then I came to the Netherlands to study. I studied international business, and I've always had a sense of you want to do something back for your island. And a few years ago, I got into contact with Greenpeace during an interview at the genesis of the campaign Climate Justice for Bonaire. And soon after, I noticed an opportunity arrived where I could actually contribute by becoming a community organizer and mobilizer. And I had to jump on it. And now I work at Greenpeace for the island where I grew up on.
So how long have you been working at Greenpeace?
Just over a year.
Okay.
I started last year in July.
And so just for our understanding, what does a community organizer do at Greenpeace?
Yeah, so Greenpeace has a history of working together with communities in impacted areas. So you build people power together, and then you try to affect change to protect the environment and also the spaces where people live in. And so I do that. So on a side note, so I'm a community organizer mobilizer in the Netherlands, so as an European Netherlands.
Yes.
But my sister is a community organizer and mobilizer on Bonaire.
Nice.
So we're kind of like two sides of a medallion.
Mhm.
And what she does on the island with the community on Bonaire, I do here in the European Netherlands with I would say the Caribbean diaspora from the ABCSSS Islands here in the Netherlands.
Right.
And we try to bridge that connection as it comes to climate change and climate justice for the islands.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you're like collaborating together. I've seen the pictures indeed that I didn't know she was like doing the same job as you there. It's really nice. And also the ship, the Greenpeace ship went there. I'm assuming you guys had something to do with it.
Yeah.
So what was the whole point of this visit to Bonaire and how did that go?
Okay, so the campaign has become, you could say, more public last year in the summer. So we noticed that the islands, or as we know, generally islands are more susceptible to the impacts of climate change. And if we look to Bonaire, Saint Eustatius, and Saba, they are territories of the Netherlands. And thus, the Netherlands also has a responsibility to protect all of its citizens against the impacts of climate change. As a responsibility to make sure that they have the right for life, safety, so that they can grow up future generations as well. And we noticed that in European Netherlands, you have different standards and measures being taken. So you have standards in place that's for the rarest type of storms there's measures being taken to ensure that the lives of people are protected.
Yeah.
But nothing was put in place for the islands. So a research was asked to be done by the Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam on the potential impacts of climate change on Bonaire. We published that in August last year, I believe it was.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, it was basically more of so to the people of Bonaire, who is Greenpeace? Why is Greenpeace now in Bonaire? What is climate change? What are the impacts on Bonaire? What are the potential impacts as well? And what can we do about that?
Yeah.
And the Arctic Sunrise, so the ship that came, was also in that effort to allow the community on Bonaire to get to know Greenpeace more, ask questions, inform themselves also on the matters and the campaign.
And how were you received by the community there?
It was actually pretty good. We had something over 2,000 people have visited the ship. It was there for about a week, slightly more than a week. There were also open both days. There were also moments when schools organized, as in we had school groups organized to come. We also had the local politicians also were invited on the ship for a masterclass about climate change and its impacts for Bonaire.
Yeah.
And if I think about the size of the population, this is almost like 10% of population visiting the ship. So that's actually really, really good. Yeah.
Yeah, that brings some hope, because I was talking about this topic. Also, part of what we do at Kreashon will also bring up climate change, as we're talking about social, environmental, economic interconnectedness. So the climate change is one of those topics that come up. And I got asked the question, is Bonaire really waiting for you to come with all of this climate thing? That's why I was curious to how they responded to you, Greenpeace, going there.
Yeah, I think one thing we should always keep in mind is that the impacts of climate change is kind of intersectional in the sense that it impacts us all, but it impacts us differently. If you have someone that I'm going to take the context of Bonaire. If you have someone that lives in a house that's built with bricks, and you have like storm-proof windows, let's say you have storms that come. Currently, we're in the hurricane season as well. You still feel pretty safe in your house.
Yeah.
But if you live in a house that's built of wood, and you have like the tin roofs, like we have in the Konukus, wind can catch them easily. They can fly. They can become a hazard.
Right.
And if your roof flies off, and let's say in a week or two there's another storm coming, you feel less safe. So there's a different impact on you. And what you also see is that if you already are struggling to afford your house, make sure there's food on the table, you don't have the mental space to think about the impacts of climate change, which might come next week or next month or next year or in 10 years. So you don't have the space to think about what comes in the future because you're so focused on now.
Yeah, you're surviving.
Yeah, you're in survival mode.
But do you need a week from now? I need food right now.
Yeah, so it's almost like a luxury problem to think about climate change. And in that sense, I do understand when people say like, do we even have the time or space to talk about climate change right now?
Yeah.
Or are they ready to talk about it, as you just said? Yeah.
No, that's really interesting. And as we're talking about the community, I saw also that Greenpeace, along with a community of Bonaireans, I don't know, did you sue the government, or is that like was like a warning letter? For me, it was like unclear the exact status of where you are.
Yeah. Okay, so the campaign, part of the campaign is an element that we call strategic litigation. Mm-hmm. So you're using litigation, so a court case, to also affect change.
Yeah.
And it also sets a precedent. So, for example, if we win the court case, then you have a precedent which, for example, SEBA can use to also do their own court case because there's already been a precedent set.
Yeah.
And there are steps that you need to take before you can take someone to court. And the last one that was taken, so I think the one you're referring to is when we sent the sommatiebrief. So in English, I believe it's called a pre-litigation letter.
Okay.
To the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, and this is, you can see it as a final warning. And they also have the Dutch state also have a deadline until the end of September to meet the demands, or else you will take the next steps and then you actually start in court.
Okay, so we're not at suing yet. We've warned them, and before these warnings, if to my understanding, because I'm not a lawyer, before this warning, there were other steps that were already taken. So you've been already sending letters to the state.
Yeah, so it's also like if someone's committing a crime, you need to let them know that they're committing a crime. They need to be aware of that.
Yeah.
So you can say that the efforts of the research as well shows that Bonaire is at risk for these impacts, and we also have reports from the SPS, the international reports for I forgot the name, but you also have like international reports that also say that small islands and developing states are also at risk. So these are signals that we've been receiving for many, many years that say islands are at risk.
Yeah.
And then if the Dutch state knows that islands are a state and they don't take action, then you're doing something that's not right.
Yeah.
So the effort, so the whole last year was also making sure that the Dutch state knows you are breaking these people's rights, the right to life, right to family life, culture, etc.
Right.
And then if you notice that they don't act on it, then you can continue to take the next steps.
Yeah, I'm a bit curious, and my to be very honest, my conspiracy theory brain just went like, didn't they already know that they were, like
they did.
Yeah.
Or well, I can say they did, but that would be my opinion. But I would say that they did because we've also asked for woverzoeken, so you can also look into all conversations that the government has had around the islands, climate change, and those topics. And what we see is that structurally and systematically, you always see in the small letters, the islands are excluded from this and this and this.
All right.
So also with the Paris Agreement, you also see that the islands have been excluded from those goals.
Right. It's such an interesting relationship, I think, that we have as islands in terms of with like the EU, because you have the EU. Sorry, the EU has all of these agreements, and they have all of these funds available for these kinds of research. And we are supposed to be part of the EU, like if not geographically, but politically. So I do find it interesting how they handle this, or the lack of handle, actually, because it's like we're only getting the attention when it suits them, almost. At least that's how it feels like to me. When it suits them, we get the attention, and these things that I would think are maybe more pressing to give attention to aren't giving the attention. So yeah, I was just really excited to learn about your case and what you're doing, and that there's already a group of people behind this. And how big is the group of people that have been like sending the letter or co-signed the letter? I don't know how you would call these people.
So currently Greenpeace, together with 7 inhabitants of Bonaire, are taking these legal steps. And you have some of the people are inhabitants on Bonaire, and you also have some that are living here in European Netherlands. Because we also acknowledge that while the population is also diverse, you want to also have a diversity of representation in the case.
Yeah.
But due to nature, so such as myself, I came to Netherlands to study. I think the same as you as well.
Same. Yeah.
There's a lot of people from Bonaire that come here, but you still have those cultural and those family ties to the island.
Hmm.
So that's why we also have plaintiffs here and also on the island.
Okay. And how big is the group of plaintiffs?
7.
Seven.
So seven inhabitants of Bonaire and Greenpeace. So all of them, including Greenpeace, they're all individual plaintiffs.
Okay. And I understood that, or not I understood. I saw the page that you're asking kind of backup from the public as well. Like you could sign the petition to, and how does this help? Like, let's say I did sign the petition and other people are signing the petition. How does this help your case?
So we launched I don't know the word in English, but in Dutch it's called medestanders. You can kind of see it as someone writes a letter is claiming XYZ, and then you as a person say, I also sign and support
Okay.
what this person is doing.
Yeah.
So if someone would to become a medestander, they are saying that I support the people of Bonaire and Greenpeace in this court case.
All right.
And I also stand with the demands that they have against the Dutch state.
Okay.
And it also helps a lot to also show the court that not only these plaintiffs are the ones that demand this justice, but also other people of the broader community.
Okay. Got it. That's, I mean, yeah, this story is just my my brain going, oh, that's interesting. And I hate continuously saying that's interesting, but it is interesting. But
it does certainly help. Yeah.
And what are the next steps? So we're now waiting for September to see if any steps has been taken by the prime minister. It was that you handed it off, but like the cabinet broke. So
yeah. So inderdaad.
No, but don't worry.
So the cabinet did fall. However, we did receive an invitation to go in conversation with some of the ministers.
Mhm.
So soon the plaintiffs will be talking to the Minister Jette, so Minister for Climate. Also someone from you have 2 ministers and also 1 Secretary of State that will be in the meeting. So they will represent 2 different ministries, and also the Secretary of State will be present, and they will have a conversation with the plaintiffs about the demands. However, if we look at the track record of the promises that the Netherlands has made, for example, if I look at minimum loan,
Yeah.
I think we are at the 4th commission that's going to make another report as to why we should have a minimum loan on the island.
Yeah.
So there isn't much trust that the Netherlands is all of a sudden going to do what is necessary to protect the island. I would love to be pleasantly surprised, but I do have doubts. So we will continue to take the preparations necessary to go to the next step.
Okay. And yeah, and it's, as you mentioned, being pleasantly surprised. What would this look like? Like, the best case scenario.
Case scenario, yeah. So in the demands, if I had to break it down, there's technically 2 demands. One demand is about protecting Bonaire, making sure that more research is being done into what the risks are and what is necessary to remove those risks. Because right now, the only research that we did a research, and we asked the Prime Minister to do a research, but that's not the obligation of an NGO to do. This is something that belongs with the state.
Yeah.
But that's one report. And if you look at the body of knowledge in the whole Netherlands about impacts for European Netherlands, this is a big contrast.
Yeah.
So you need more research. You need to know what the options are, and also take these considerations involve the local community of Bonaire into this decision, so it doesn't become a top down. You're gonna do ABC because we think this is best. No, you need to see what fits with the culture, what fits with the people, because measures that you take also have an impact on people's lives. And the other thing that needs to happen is that you want to mitigate the potential impact as much as possible. And by that, more concretely, means that the Netherlands needs to reduce its own CO2 emissions very quickly. And this is because we can take all the measures that we want to protect Bonaire, but if the Netherlands keeps emitting emissions, like we say in Parliamentu, it's like, or as we say also in Saint Dutch, it's like you're sweeping water into the sea.
Yeah.
Or you're mopping with the faucet open. So it's like you're not really helping the problem.
I'm reminded of one of my favorite memes, which is a gentleman at the beach with a mop mopping the ocean.
In Parliament we say "karga awa yung balamang."
Yeah,
so
carry water to the ocean.
Yeah,
just where the water comes from to begin with.
Yes.
Yeah, I can see that. And I do agree with you that there's a whole lot of research on this for the Netherlands and the effects it will have for the Netherlands, different scenarios, different cases that they can, of courses that they can take. And I'm always, once one of these researches come out, I always very excitedly, perhaps naively, go and look for what are they talking about the islands, and it's like zero mention, acknowledgement of the islands. So I do agree that there's a lot more research that needs to be done, and I would think that cutting emissions, I mean, yeah, the Netherlands can cut emissions, but I think it's a global thing, right? Like,
definitely.
I think at the end, if the Netherlands is like completely like carbon neutral and the rest of the world is still heavily polluted, we will still be affected because the world does not account for boundaries or political relationships. It's just nature in that sense. And okay, and then what do you think would be like the worst case scenario, since we looked at the best case?
So worst case scenario from the research that the planning research has done, from what we can see, is that if no measures are taken, some things that you can notice really quickly is how bad the corals will be.
Yeah.
If you think about Bonaire, a lot of its income drives on tourism, diving tourism to be exact. So there's the corals serve like two purposes. Corals are a natural wave breaker or storm breaker, so it can protect the island against storms. But they also attract the tourists, which brings income to the many people that work in Horeca, or also if you think about people that fish to bring food to their tables. And if the temperature of the ocean rises, it also has impact on the corals, the state of the corals. But also we notice that even now there's also like diseases impacting the corals of Bonaire. So that you can really see like in only like a few decades like how fast they can degrade. Some impacts that you also see is that with more droughts, farmers will also have less ability actually to grow food. People's health will also be impacted because of the heat. We also see, for example, if it does rain, you might get heavy storm rains, but because the ground is so dry, basically the water just flushes over top and just erodes away into the ocean. And I think one of the biggest impacts that you can physically see is that a large portion of the south side of the island and also near the capital can become permanently inundated by sea level rise, and also even more with in combination with storms.
Yeah.
And if I look on Bonaire, if I know if I'm thinking about, for example, where our important infrastructure is, like the airport. If I think about where the hospital is, it's going to be flooded.
Yeah, I mean that's already an issue with heavy.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that I recall from my youth that when the heavy storms hit, that there was already issues around the hospital area where you can barely like drive to, park there to get out and go to the hospital. So
Yeah.
yeah, um, and do you think that some of that can be solved with like infrastructure as well, like adapting the
Yeah.
infrastructure? Really?
So when I talked about the demands in the case,
Mhm.
so if I would give them a term, the protecting Bonaire is called, you can call it adaptation. So how will you go about with the impacts?
Yeah.
And part of adaptation is then making sure if it does rain, how do you control that rain? Do you want it to go into the ground so you
Mhm.
have more groundwater for the farmers, for example, or if you want to redirect it from certain places? So infrastructure does play a role in that, or can play a role. Um, but to know exactly to what extent, you need the research to be able to know, and then the funding to be able to do it.
Right. So
But yeah, but I do think it can play a role, yes.
yeah, so I was just gonna conclude the big overarching issue here is the lack of research in terms of adaptation to these possibilities in the future. Some things are being done, so I think um, because my house is like in the center, so I know that they were um, doing some things with the street to avoid this kind of flooding situation. Or my mom told me, well, it hasn't rained so hard yet, so we have to wait and see if it worked.
Yeah,
uh,
I've seen pictures of Aruba this week,
okay.
all the storms. So I hope it doesn't happen on Bonaire as well.
Yeah, okay. Well, we're waiting to see. And again, for the people in the capital, we know what area we're in because it was always like this. Always with heavy rains, my father would go and open the drains. There's countless pictures of him in the in the newspaper opening the drain during an old newspaper, so I would have to search, but where he was opening the drain so that the water uh,
No,
flushes out. So we do know that there's a risk of flooding, and I hope that the changes that they are starting to do now is gonna help. But I think we can conclude that a lot more has to happen. I think one of the other issues, I was talking to someone about this yesterday. They said, well, yeah, there's so much to do. There's actually too much happening on Bonaire, and we don't have or the government, the municipality doesn't have the right amount of skilled workers to implement because there's policies, but the implementation lacks short because there's so much to do, and there's just not enough people to do this. Um, so if we look at ways of solving this, do you think we can make more young people on Bonaire kind of excited to get involved to, I don't know, study something like climate adaptation, just to name something?
I do think it's possible. If I think like, for example, practically on Bonaire, right now they're building a very big solar park.
Mhm.
Um, so I think, for example, if we have I believe we have electricians opleiding at the MBO. So
Yeah.
you can say, okay, we're gonna make sure that for the next coming years, people are better equipped to become solar panel technicians. That's something that could help if, let's say, you have the ones on the mountain
Mhm.
from the energy company, but let's say if more people as well that have the means to put solar panels to switch off from the fossil energy, then you have jobs that actually also provide and benefit from that. If you know that you're going to be working a lot with water management, it also makes sense to make sure that you have students that learn more about that.
Yeah.
I know, for example, there's a friend of mine that actually studied road infrastructure in the Netherlands and once would like to go back to the islands. And then it would make sense if you have those, if you know that you have the youth that study these things,
Yeah.
create those options for them to come back, facilitate or help facilitate them, make it easier for them to come back
Yeah.
because they have the knowledge, but they also know the context of their own island.
Yeah.
The people of the people always know from where they live. They always know best what works.
Yeah, that's true. And I think that it also bridges in the sense that because you know the local area and you know the culture, you know, the language, it can help bridge also that it's not just some external person coming in and then telling us what to do, but it's passionate people from the land coming back and trying to contribute to this. So I do hope to see more people going back to do something. Um, yeah, that was really interesting. I mean, I can go on forever about this. We can go really deep, like even with my thought about solar panel. Like yes, that's a solution, but also I start seeing the issue with the natural resources needed to make all of that possible, and you know the whole batteries situations, and which is at the moment not really regenerative resources. So that's a whole different kind of worms that I'm choosing not to open right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not really my expertise, but from what I've read, I do know that they do say like in the Caribbean, because you have a lot of sun and a constant stream of wind, you do have those options for renewable energies.
Yeah.
And I believe that there are also ways to create what you call batteries using water, as in you pump water up to a higher elevation and you can use it to power turbines.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's a different conversation.
I
Maybe
know.
that's really way.
That's why it's
Yeah,
like, yeah, we're choosing not to open that counter for.
yeah,
I'm making a note for it, so I'm gonna do some more research. I like that idea of water battery, just to make things more regenerative. Because yes, we can use nature, but the point is that we're using nature right now, in a way that doesn't refill nature, and that is the issue because we're depleting everything
yeah.
for everyone else.
Constantly pulling.
Yeah, and making it. Yeah, but that's I'm gonna do a regeneration episode. um, is there anything else that you would like to share with our audience?
What I would like to share is that every little bit that people do to help or contribute, it it does matter. Um, and I think like even if we think like on a personal level, for example, if for some people to the conversation about becoming vegan or vegetarian might be too much, but let's say if you eat meat one day less in a week, if we think about one person doing that or like 1,000 people doing that, that already has an impact.
Yeah.
But also when people do different campaigns and they have petitions and things like that, it also helps because, for example, signing a petition shows, and then they are also able to show or and prove that this is an issue that's going on in the community.
Yeah.
So if I think, for example, in this campaign in particular, and they were taking the legal steps against the state, becoming a medestander is a really good way that you can contribute to it as well. I don't know if you can put the link in below or
I
something.
will put a link somewhere. It will come. Send me all the links that you want to be linked, and I'll make sure that they
Yeah.
are there.
But then I would really invite people to also like support this case and become a medestander. I think for Bonaire, so recently I was in the Pacific. I went to Vanuatu as part of a Pacific climate tour to gather evidence on climate impacts on the islands there to support the campaigns there. Last week they were at Kiowa, it's an island from Fiji. Was the last place that they went to in the campaign, in the tour. And there's a picture of an elder. He was born in, I believe, 1952. He was standing with his grandchild where the coastal line used to be, and he's standing with his grandson, and the water is coming at shoulder height.
Wow. Yeah.
This is within 3 generations. Consciously, you already see the impacts of climate change. And with what I know, so from the research that I've seen from the Universiteit, I see the potential impact that this has for Bonaire, but we still have a chance to make sure that it doesn't happen. So this is why I really urge people to do take action and support the people of Bonaire in this case, because it really can make a difference whether people in the future will still have access to the land, the culture, and their right to life.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me today and telling us more about your work. And obviously, we can't, if we go into all of the details, we'll be here for like 2 hours. But I think that's a nice introduction into you and what you do, and what is this case about that you're working on, why is it's important. And for anyone that this story resonates with and you want to support the efforts of Greenpeace and the plaintiffs, we will link it somewhere. I think probably in the description box will be the easiest, and you can co-sign this petition. And on that note, thank you for joining us on Kreashon Podcast.
Yes, thank you for having me.